The security camera catches it all. A perfectly manicured hand reaching for the trash can at 6:47 a.m., the same hand that's been doing it for 3 weeks straight. But this time, when Karen grips the handle, something clicks. Her eyes go wide, the can doesn't tip, it opens. And what pours out isn't garbage. Her scream echoes through the cul-de-sac as neighbors' lights flicker on one by one. Marcus watches from his window, coffee in hand, a thin smile crossing his face. The trap worked perfectly. The trash can hit the street with a metallic crash that jolted Marcus awake at 6:30 in the morning. Again. He threw off the covers and stumbled to the bedroom window, already knowing what he'd see. His dark green bin lay on its side in the middle of Oakmont Drive, garbage spilling across the asphalt like a crime scene. Standing over it, arms crossed in triumph, was Patricia Hendricks, HOA president, neighborhood watchdog, and the woman who'd made Marcus's life a living hell for the past 3 months. 3 feet, she called out, not to anyone in particular, but loud enough for the entire cul-de-sac to hear. The bylaws clearly state 3 feet from the curb, not 2 feet, not 2.5, 3. Marcus pulled on his jeans and a t-shirt, his jaw clenched so tight his teeth ached. This was the 4th time this week. 4th time Patricia had kicked over his trash can because she claimed it violated some obscure HOA regulation that nobody else seemed to give a damn about. He burst through his front door, the morning air sharp against his skin. "Patricia, what the hell is wrong with you?" She turned slowly, her silver bob catching the early sunlight, her cream-colored cardigan buttoned all the way to her throat despite the approaching summer heat. Her smile was razor-thin. "Good morning, Marcus. I see you're still having trouble with measurement." That can was exactly where it's supposed to be. 3 feet from the curb. She pulled a small measuring tape from her pocket, because of course she carried one and made a show of extending it. 2 feet, 7 inches. I've documented it. She held up her phone, the camera aimed at him. "And I've documented your aggressive approach as well." Marcus forced himself to take a breath. He'd moved to Oakmont Hills 6 months ago, drawn by the quiet streets and the good schools nearby, hopping to start fresh after his divorce. The house had cost nearly everything he had, and he couldn't afford to get fined or, God forbid, sued by the HOA. "Look," he said, keeping his voice level, "I've got a measuring tape too. Let's just—" "The violation has been recorded. You'll receive a formal notice by end of business today. That's your 3rd this month, which means the fine escalates to $500. She turned on her heel, her white keds squeaking against the pavement. "Have a blessed day." Marcus stood there, hands in fists at his sides, watching her march back to her pristine colonial at the circle's head. Around him, he could feel the neighborhood watching from behind curtains and between blinds. Nobody came out. Nobody ever came out. He spent the next 20 minutes cleaning up his garbage, stuffing coffee grounds and food waste back into the bin while a few cars slowed to gawk. By the time he got to work, a software company downtown where he'd just made senior developer, he was 40 minutes late, and his manager, Bate, was already at his desk. "Rough morning?" she asked, eyebrows raised. "You have no idea." That evening, Marcus sat in his home office, staring at the Oakmont Hills HOA bylaws document, all 73 pages of it. He'd read it cover to cover when he bought the house, but Patricia seemed to pull new rules from thin air. Section 4.7, paragraph B did mention trash receptacles being placed at a minimum distance of 3 feet from the curb line on collection days. What it didn't mention was anything about Patricia Hendricks having the authority to physically kick people's trash cans into the street. His phone buzzed. A text from his neighbor 2 doors down, Miguel Santos, the only person on the street who'd actually talked to him beyond basic pleasantries. "Dude, she just posted about you in the HOA Facebook group. You need to see this." Marcus pulled up the private group, Oakmont Hills Community, scrolled to Patricia's latest post, uploaded 20 minutes ago. Another morning, another violation from 2847 Oakmont Drive. This resident continues to show blatant disregard for our community standards despite multiple warnings. His trash receptacle was placed in clear violation of Section 4.7b, and when confronted about it, he approached me in an aggressive and threatening manner. I've documented everything for our attorney. Some people simply don't understand that property values are everyone's responsibility. Community standards rules exist property pride. Below the post, 43 reactions, mostly likes and loves from people Marcus had never met. The comments were worse. "Thank you for your vigilance, Patricia. We didn't pay premium prices to live next to slobs. I've seen this guy, always looks angry, probably why his wife left him. Can we vote him out somehow? There are procedures, right? Marcus's hands trembled as he held the phone. That last comment, the one about his wife, it was from Jennifer Cho, who lived 3 houses down and who Marcus had met exactly once at the mailbox. How did she even know about Sarah? He called Miguel. I saw it, Miguel said before Marcus could speak. Man, Patricia's on a warpath with you, what you do to piss her off. I exist, that's apparently enough. She did this to the Reyes family last year. Made their life so miserable they sold the house at a loss just to get out. And before that, there was this young couple. How does she get away with it? Miguel sighed. She's been HOA president for 12 years. Everyone's either afraid of her or related to her. Her daughter sits on the board, her nephew handles the HOA legal stuff, and her son-in-law does all the landscaping contracts. It's a whole thing. That can't be legal. Legal enough that nobody's successfully challenged it. Look, my advice. Measure everything twice, keep your head down, and for God's sake, don't give her any ammunition. After hanging up, Marcus stood at his window, looking out at the cul-de-sac bathed in streetlight glow. Patricia's house blazed with light, every window illuminated like a fortress. While he watched, she emerged onto her front porch with what looked like binoculars. She was watching him watch her. Marcus closed the blinds and opened his laptop. If Patricia wanted to play by the rules, he'd learn every single one. And if she wanted to document everything, well, 2 could play that game. He spent the next 3 hours researching HOA law, reading through case files, and joining online forums for people dealing with nightmare HOA situations. One thread in particular caught his attention. Fighting back, legal and creative solutions. Some of the stories were inspiring, others were cautionary tales. But one comment from a user named TrashPanda47 made him pause. They can't fine you for being smarter than them. They can only fine you for breaking rules, so follow every rule perfectly and make them wish you hadn't. Marcus leaned back in his chair, a plan beginning to form. Patricia thought she could terrorize him into submission. She had no idea who she was dealing with. He grabbed his measuring tape, a notepad, and went outside. At exactly 3 feet from the curb, verified with a level and measured twice, he placed a small paint mark on the driveway. Then he took 17 photographs from different angles, time-stamped and GPS-tagged. Tomorrow morning, his trash can would be perfect. And if Patricia still found a way to knock it over, well, then he'd have proof that this had never been about the rules at all. Marcus woke at 5:30 the next morning, an hour before trash collection. He'd barely slept, running scenarios through his head all night. The trash can sat in his garage, already positioned on a small platform with wheels for easy, precise movement. He'd spent the previous evening building a simple wooden frame that held the can at exactly 3 feet from the curb, verified by 3 separate measurements, and a laser level borrowed from Miguel. He'd even installed a small webcam in his front window, aimed at the street, recording to a cloud storage service. At 6 o'clock, Marcus wheeled the entire apparatus to the curb. The can sat perfectly in its frame, immovable, precise. He took another series of photographs, checked the camera feed on his phone, and went inside to make coffee. At 6:43, Patricia emerged from her house like clockwork. Marcus watched through his front window, but also through his phone, the camera capturing everything in high definition. She approached his trash can, measuring tape already in hand. She measured once, twice. Her face tightened. She walked around the wooden frame, examining it from every angle, clearly looking for any violation she could cite. Finding none, she tried to kick the frame. It didn't budge. Marcus smiled into his coffee mug. Patricia pulled out her phone and took photographs, then made what looked like an angry call. 3 minutes later, she was back in her house. Marcus's phone buzzed almost immediately, a formal HOA notice sent via email. Violation Notice 28470 for 1-2, unapproved structure in public right-of-way. The wooden frame supporting your trash receptacle constitutes an unauthorized structure and must be removed immediately or face a $750 fine. You have 24 hours to comply. Oakmont Hills HOA Board. Marcus forwarded the email to his newly retained lawyer, Andrea Chen, who he'd found through one of those HOA nightmare forums. She'd taken his case on contingency after hearing his story, saying it was exactly the kind of HOA overreach she loved to fight. 20 minutes later, Andrea called back. "They're grasping at straws," she said. "A trash can frame isn't a structure, it's a trash can holder. Completely legal. I'm drafting a response now, but Marcus, this is escalating fast. Are you sure you want to continue?" "She's made it personal. Yeah, I'm sure." "Then let's make sure everything you do is airtight. I mean everything. Time stamps, photographs, measurements. The more documentation, the better." For the next week, Marcus lived his life in meticulous detail. Every morning, he measured his trash can placement. Every evening, he documented his lawn height, 2.8 inches within the 2.535-inch requirement, his mailbox condition, pristine, and his driveway cleanliness, spotless. Patricia, meanwhile, escalated. She started doing evening neighborhood patrols with a clipboard and camera, documenting every house on the street. But Marcus noticed she spent significantly more time in front of his house, photographing from multiple angles, sometimes standing there for 15 minutes at a time. The HOA Facebook group became a daily battleground. Patricia posted constantly. "Residents who install creative trash can systems are missing the point. The rules exist to maintain uniformity and beauty, not to showcase individual cleverness. Community-first rules have reasons." But now some neighbors were starting to push back. Miguel commented, "Actually, Patricia, if he's following the rules exactly as written, what's the problem?" Someone named David Tran, who Marcus didn't even know, added, "I've been measuring, and like half the street is closer than 3 feet. Why is Marcus the only one getting notices?" Patricia's response was swift and venomous. "Those concerned with fairness rather than standards should perhaps reconsider whether Oakmont Hills is the right community for them. I enforce violations as I encounter them, and Mr. Reed's property is unfortunately the most visible violation point on our street. Leadership isn't popular." The thread exploded into a 40-comment argument. Marcus stayed out of it, but he screenshotted everything and sent it to Andrea. "This is gold," she said when she called. "She's documenting her own bias. Keep letting her talk." On Thursday evening, Marcus came home from work to find a formal HOA meeting notice taped to his door. "Emergency Board Meeting, May 18th, 7:00 p.m. Subject: Ongoing violations and community standards enforcement at 2847 Oakmont Drive. Resident attendance optional but recommended." The meeting was in 2 days. Marcus called Andrea. "They're escalating this to a board meeting." "Perfect. That means official minutes, official proceedings, and official evidence of harassment. I'll be there with you. Don't worry, we're prepared." That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He pulled up property records and started researching Patricia's tenure as HOA president. What he found was disturbing. In 12 years, Patricia had filed over 300 violation notices. The next most active board member had filed 17. She'd been named in 4 lawsuits, 3 settled out of court with confidentiality agreements, 1 dismissed on a technicality. And the property turnover rate on Oakmont Drive was almost triple the surrounding neighborhoods. She wasn't just enforcing rules, she was driving people out. But why? Marcus dug deeper, pulling up old neighborhood newsletters and meeting minutes from the public record. There, buried in a meeting from 13 years ago, he found something interesting. Patricia hadn't always been HOA president. She'd run against a man named Robert Chen, Andrea Chen's father, Marcus realized with a jolt. Robert had proposed limiting board members to single 3-year terms, establishing an independent arbitration process for violations, and removing the president's unilateral authority to issue fines. He'd lost by 3 votes. 2 months later, Robert and his family moved away. Marcus leaned back, pieces clicking into place. This wasn't about trash cans or property values. This was about power. Patricia had built a kingdom on this cul-de-sac, and anyone who challenged her got crushed. The next morning, Marcus found his mailbox lying in the middle of his driveway, post snapped clean in half. No note, no explanation, just destruction. He called the police this time. The officer who responded, a weary-looking man named Rodriguez, took a report but didn't sound optimistic. "Unless you have footage of who did it, it's just vandalism. Could be kids, could be anyone." "I know who did it." Knowing and proving are different things, Mr. Reed. My advice: install more cameras and document everything. After Rodriguez left, Marcus checked his front window camera footage. At 3:17 a.m., a figure in dark clothing and a hood had approached his mailbox with what looked like a baseball bat. The face was obscured, the body shape unclear. No definitive identification possible. But the figure had come from the direction of Patricia's house and returned in the same direction. Marcus sent the footage to Andrea, then to Miguel, then posted it in the HOA Facebook group with a simple caption. My mailbox was destroyed last night at 3:17 a.m. If anyone has security footage or information, please contact me. I've filed a police report. The post got 26 reactions in 10 minutes, but the comments were divided. This is terrible. Who would do this? Probably just kids. Don't be paranoid, Marcus. Very concerning. I'll check my camera. And then from Patricia. Perhaps if certain residents didn't antagonize the community with their hostile attitudes and constant drama, they wouldn't invite such problems. Actions have consequences. Personal responsibility. Miguel called immediately. Dude, did she just basically admit to destroying your mailbox? She implied it. That's not the same thing legally. But everyone's seeing this. She's making herself look insane. Marcus wasn't so sure. Patricia's posts were still getting plenty of support from longtime residents. The cul-de-sac was choosing sides, and he wasn't certain his side was winning. Saturday morning, the day of the board meeting, Marcus installed 4 additional security cameras around his property. 2 on the front corners, 1 facing his driveway, 1 covering his backyard. All recording to cloud storage, all time-stamped and GPS-tagged. He'd learned from the mailbox incident. If Patricia wanted to escalate, he'd have proof of everything. At 6:45 p.m., Marcus and Andrea walked into the Oakmont Hills Community Center, a small building at the neighborhood entrance. The meeting room was packed, at least 30 residents crammed into a space meant for 20. Patricia sat at a head table with 2 other board members, her daughter, Melissa Hendricksport, and a nervous-looking man in his 60s named Gary Friedman. All 3 had folders thick with documents in front of them. Marcus and Andrea took seats in the front row. Miguel was there, sitting toward the back. A few other neighbors Marcus recognized but couldn't name, and several people he'd never seen before, probably from other streets in the development. Patricia banged a gavel, an actual wooden gavel, at 7 o'clock sharp. This emergency session of the Oakmont Hills HOA board is called to order. We're here to address ongoing violations and community disruption from the property at 2847 Oakmont Drive, owned by Marcus Reed. Andrea stood immediately. Madam President, I'm Andrea Chen, attorney representing Mr. Reed. I'd like to enter a formal objection to these proceedings. My client has received no due process, no opportunity to respond to allegations, and this meeting appears designed solely to intimidate him. Patricia's smile was ice. Ms. Chen, your father tried similar tactics years ago. They didn't work then either. Mr. Reed has been given multiple notices, multiple warnings, and has chosen to respond with hostility, and, she paused dramatically, property destruction accusations against board members. I never accused you specifically, Marcus said, keeping his voice calm. I posted footage of my mailbox being destroyed and asked if anyone had information. The implication was clear. You've created a hostile environment in this community, Mr. Reed, and now we must address it formally. For the next hour, Patricia presented her case. Photographs of Marcus's trash can frame, screenshots of Miguel's divisive Facebook comments, testimony from residents claiming Marcus had made them uncomfortable with his surveillance cameras and aggressive energy. Andrea countered each point methodically. The trash can frame wasn't a structure. Marcus's cameras were on his own property. The resident testimony was hearsay and unverifiable. But Marcus could feel the room's energy. Patricia had cultivated these people for 12 years. They trusted her, they feared her, and Marcus was the outsider who'd been here 6 months. Finally, Gary Friedman cleared his throat. I'd like to propose that we table this discussion and form a mediation committee. This seems like something that could be resolved with better communication. Patricia's head swiveled toward him like a turret. Gary, we've discussed this. Mr. Reed has had ample opportunity to comply. What he needs is consequences. I'm just saying maybe we're being. Do you want to remain on this board, Gary? The room went silent. Gary's face paled. I withdraw my suggestion. Andrea leaned over to Marcus. Did she just threaten him in open session? Marcus nodded slowly. He was recording the meeting on his phone, tucked in his jacket pocket, every word. Patricia stood, her gavel raised. The board finds Marcus Reed in continuing violation of community standards. Effective immediately, all existing fines are escalated, and he is placed on probationary status. Any further violations will result in legal action to force compliance or force sale of the property. This meeting is adjourned. She banged the gavel. Andrea shot to her feet. You can't force someone to sell their home without. But Patricia was already gathering her papers, Melissa following close behind. The room emptied quickly, neighbors avoiding eye contact with Marcus as they filed out. Miguel approached, his expression grim. Man, that was brutal. She threatened a board member in open session, Andrea said, her phone already out. I've never seen anything like that. Marcus stood there, watching Patricia leave through a side door. She turned back once, meeting his eyes across the empty room. Her smile was triumphant. Marcus smiled back, because what Patricia didn't know was that Gary Friedman had approached him in the parking lot before the meeting, slipping him a folder full of documents. Internal HOA financial records, violation patterns, settlement agreements. Everything Marcus needed to prove what Patricia really was. The war wasn't over, it was just beginning. Marcus spent Sunday morning at Andrea's office, spreading Gary Friedman's documents across her conference table. The financial records were damning. 12 years of HOA budget discrepancies, inflated landscaping contracts paid to Patricia's son-in-law, and settlement agreements that had cost the HOA over $200,000 in legal fees. This is fraud, Andrea said, scanning through the papers with increasing disbelief. She's been embezzling from the HOA for years. These landscaping contracts are double the market rate, and look, she pointed to a line item, she approved them unilaterally, no board vote. Gary said he tried to question it once. She threatened to sue him personally for defamation. That explains why he's been so quiet. Andrea pulled up her laptop. Okay, we can report this to the state HOA regulatory board, but that'll take months to investigate. In the meantime, Patricia will keep coming after you. Marcus leaned back in his chair, thinking. The mailbox destruction, the constant harassment, the board meeting ambush. Patricia wasn't going to stop. She'd escalate until she forced him out, just like she'd done to the others. Unless he made her stop herself. What if we don't report it yet? Marcus said slowly. What if we let her keep thinking she's winning? Andrea raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. She's obsessed with my trash can. Every violation she's written me has been about placement, about the frame, about rules she's interpreting to target me specifically. What if I give her exactly what she wants, perfect compliance, and see what she does? You think she'll escalate anyway? I know she will. Gary said she did the same thing to the Ray's family. Started with trash cans, moved to lawn height, then paint colors, then tree trimming. She manufactures violations until people break. So you want to, what? Catch her manufacturing a violation? Marcus nodded. With cameras, witnesses, and documentation, if we can prove she's harassing me regardless of compliance, we have a hostile enforcement case. Combined with the financial fraud, we can go to the state board and the police. Andrea considered this, tapping her pen against her notepad. It's risky. If she destroys property again, that's on you. If she actually finds a legitimate violation, we lose credibility. Then I won't give her a legitimate violation. They spent the next 2 hours planning. Marcus would remove the wooden trash can frame. Technically, he'd proven his point, and instead install a permanent mounting bracket cemented into his driveway at exactly 3 feet from the curb. The cameras would be repositioned for maximum coverage, and Andrea would prepare a comprehensive complaint for the state regulatory board, ready to file the moment they had sufficient evidence. By Monday morning, Marcus had transformed his front yard into a fortress of compliance. The trash can bracket was cemented and level. His lawn was trimmed to exactly 2.9 inches. His mailbox had been replaced with an identical model, properly installed and measured. Every single item visible from the street met or exceeded HOA standards. He'd also installed 2 additional cameras, hidden in decorative birdhouses on his eaves, covering angles the obvious cameras couldn't reach. At 6:30 a.m., Patricia made her rounds. Marcus watched through his phone as she approached his property, measuring tape in hand. She measured the trash can distance, 3 feet exactly. She measured his lawn height, within compliance. She examined his mailbox, his driveway, his house numbers, his front door color. Nothing perfect compliance. Her frustration was visible even through the camera feed. She took photographs anyway, then stood there for nearly 5 minutes just staring at his house. Marcus felt a chill. This was personal for her in a way he still didn't fully understand. That evening he got his answer. Miguel called him, voice shaken. "Dude, you need to see this. Patricia's talking about you on Facebook again, but it's really weird." Marcus pulled up the HOA group. Patricia's post, uploaded an hour ago. There's a darkness in some people that no amount of rules can fix. They smile and comply on the surface while plotting beneath. I've seen it before, the outsider who comes into a community and slowly poisons it from within. They measure their compliance in inches while missing the spirit of what makes a neighborhood great. Marcus Reed thinks he's clever with his cameras and his lawyer and his perfect measurements. But I see through him. This community sees through him. And one way or another, we will remove this cancer before it spreads. Vigilance is love, protect our home, community over individual. The post had 67 reactions, but the comments were different than before. "Patricia, this feels really aggressive. Maybe dial it back. I'm uncomfortable with calling a neighbor cancer. That's too far. What did this guy actually do wrong? I'm confused." But there were also comments supporting her. "Thank you for your courage. Someone needs to stand up to these troublemakers. I've heard he's recording people without consent. That's illegal. Patricia has protected this neighborhood for years. Trust her judgment." Miguel had commented, "This is defamation, Patricia. Marcus hasn't done anything wrong." Patricia's response, "Truth is an absolute defense to defamation, Miguel. Perhaps you should reconsider which side of this you want to be on." Marcus screenshotted everything and sent it to Andrea. She called back immediately. "This is escalating into harassment and libel. We can add this to the complaint. But Marcus, I'm worried about your safety. She's becoming unhinged." "I know, but we're close. If she keeps this up, we'll have everything we need." That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He kept checking the camera feeds on his phone, watching the empty street bathed in streetlight glow. At 2:17 a.m., he saw movement. A figure in dark clothing, approaching his property from the direction of Patricia's house. Marcus bolted upright, his heart hammering. He switched to the high-resolution feeds from his hidden cameras. The figure was carrying something, a bag or container. They approached his front lawn, crouched down, started pouring something across his grass in a pattern. Marcus was already calling 911, already pulling on clothes, when he realized what they were pouring. Salt, industrial quantities of salt, spelling out letters across his lawn. "Leave," the salt spelled in 10-foot-high letters visible from the street. The figure finished and hurried away. Marcus got clear footage of the face this time, not Patricia, but a younger man, maybe late 20s, someone he didn't recognize. The police arrived 12 minutes later. Officer Rodriguez again, looking even more weary. "Mr. Reed, we're starting to see a pattern here. You think I'm making this up? I think you're in a bad situation, but without a clear identification of the suspect, there's not much we can do beyond another report." Marcus showed him the footage. Rodriguez squinted at the image. "You know this person?" "No, but I know who sent him." "Can you prove that?" "Not yet." Rodriguez sighed. "Look, I believe you, but belief isn't evidence. Document everything, keep recording, and if we can tie this person to your HOA president, then we have a case. Until then, it's just vandalism." After Rodriguez left, Marcus stood in his front yard, looking at the salt message gleaming in the streetlights. By morning, his grass would start dying. It would take weeks to repair, cost hundreds of dollars. And Patricia would claim it was his own fault somehow. He took 40 photographs from every angle, then collected salt samples in labeled bags. Andrea would want evidence of everything. At 7:15 a.m., Marcus heard his front door open. He hadn't locked it after the police left. He rushed downstairs to find Patricia standing in his entryway, phone raised, filming. "What the hell are you doing in my house?" Documenting your threatening behavior. I knocked multiple times and you didn't answer. The door was open, so I entered to ensure you were safe and found you charging at me aggressively. Get out now, or I'm calling the police. I'm already filing a police report about your threatening approach. You're unstable, Marcus. Everyone can see it. Marcus pulled out his own phone, started recording. You're trespassing. Leave immediately. Patricia smiled directly into his camera. This community will be rid of you soon, one way or another. Then she turned and walked out, pulling his door closed behind her. Marcus stood there shaking, his phone still recording. She'd entered his home. Actually entered his home without permission, without cause, just to provoke him. She was unraveling, and she was dangerous. He called Andrea, then called the police again. But he also called Miguel, and this time asked something different. How many other neighbors has she done this to? I need to talk to them, all of them. By noon, Marcus had a list of 17 former Oakmont Hills residents who'd been driven out by Patricia over the past 12 years. Andrea started making calls while Marcus dealt with the police report about the trespassing. By evening, they had statements from 5 former residents willing to testify. Stories of harassment, manufactured violations, property damage, and threats. One woman, Sarah Reyes, broke down crying on the phone. She destroyed us, Sarah said. My husband lost his job from the stress. We lost $60,000 selling the house below market just to escape. And the whole time she kept saying it was about property values and community standards, but it was never about that. It was about control. Marcus thanked her, added her statement to the growing file, and felt his resolve harden. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about every person Patricia had victimized. That night, he made a decision. He called a friend from college who worked in mechanical engineering and described what he wanted to build. You want a trash can that? Does what? His friend Jason asked. That looks completely normal but has a built-in security system. Cameras, motion sensors, GPS tracking, and a locking mechanism that triggers if someone tries to move it without authorization. Jason was quiet for a moment. That's either brilliant or insane, maybe both. Can you build it? Yeah, I can build it. It'll take a week. But Marcus, what exactly are you planning? Justice, Marcus said. I'm planning justice. The trap was being set. Patricia had made this war personal. Now Marcus would finish it. The custom trash can arrived on Saturday morning in an unmarked truck. Jason had outdone himself. From the outside, it looked like a standard dark green municipal bin, identical to every other trash can on the street. But the interior was a marvel of engineering. Okay, so here's what we've got, Jason said, walking Marcus through the specs in his garage. 4 hidden cameras with night vision here, 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 and here. He pointed to nearly invisible lenses embedded in the can's rim and handle. Motion sensors that trigger the moment someone touches it. A GPS tracker embedded in the base. And this, he pressed a hidden button on the underside of the handle, is the locking mechanism. The can's wheels locked into place with a solid click, and the lid sealed shut magnetically. Once activated, it can't be moved or opened without the override code. It weighs about 60 pounds empty because of the reinforced base, so even if someone tries to drag it, they'll struggle. And the entire time they're struggling, it's recording everything in 4K, uploading directly to your cloud storage. Marcus ran his hand along the can's surface. This is perfect. What triggers the lock? You can do it manually from your phone app, or set it to auto-trigger if the can is moved more than 6 inches from its starting position without authorization. There's also an alarm feature, not loud enough to be noise pollution, but audible enough to draw attention. They spent the next hour setting up the system, syncing it to Marcus's phone, and testing every feature. The cameras had a combined field of view that covered 360 degrees around the can. The motion sensors were sensitive enough to detect someone approaching from 15 feet away. One more thing, Jason said, pulling out a small device. This is a cellular backup. Even if someone jams your Wi-Fi or cuts your internet, the can keeps recording and uploads everything via cellular when connection is restored. Battery life is about a week on standby. Marcus clasped his friend's shoulder. Jason, you're a genius. No, I'm a guy who watches too many heist movies. You're the one planning to catch an HOA president with a trash can. That's either genius or documentary-level insanity. On Sunday morning, Marcus installed the trap. He placed it at exactly 3 feet from the curb, measured 3 times with a laser level. He took the usual documentation photos, and then he activated the system. The motion sensors armed, the cameras started their constant vigil. The GPS confirmed its position. Now he waited. Monday morning, Patricia didn't show. Marcus checked the camera feeds obsessively. Nothing. Tuesday, Wednesday, still nothing. The trash collection came and went without incident. Patricia did her evening patrols but stayed on the opposite side of the street, watching his house but not approaching. "She knows something's different," Miguel said when they met for coffee Thursday evening. "She's been spending more time on Facebook than usual, posting these weird cryptic messages about patience and waiting for the right moment. It's creepy." Marcus had seen the posts too. Sometimes the strongest move is to wait. Let your opponent think they've won, let them grow comfortable, and then strike when they're most vulnerable. Chess long game justice. He showed the post to Andrea during their video call that evening. "She's baiting you," Andrea said. "Trying to make you paranoid, waiting for you to slip up. Don't give her anything." "I haven't. Everything's perfect." "Then keep it that way. We've got statements from 8 former residents now, and Gary Friedman has agreed to testify about the financial fraud. We're building a solid case, but we need her to make a mistake, a clear, undeniable mistake." That night at 2:47 a.m., Marcus's phone erupted with alerts. Motion DETCTD, recording initiated, lock system armed. He grabbed his phone, pulled up the camera feeds. 2 figures approached his trash can in the darkness, both wearing hoodies, faces obscured. But the high-resolution cameras caught details. One was the same young man who'd salted his lawn. The other was taller, heavier build. They reached for the can simultaneously, trying to tip it over. The lock engaged with an audible click. The can didn't budge. Both figures pulled harder. Nothing. One of them kicked it. The reinforced base absorbed the impact without moving an inch. Marcus was already pulling on clothes, already dialing 911, when he saw Patricia emerge from the shadows behind them. She was wearing all black, her silver hair covered by a dark cap, but the cameras caught her face clearly when she leaned in to examine the can. "Pull it harder," she hissed. The audio was crystal clear. "I don't care if you have to drag it, get it into the street." "It's not moving, Mrs. Hendricks. I think it's bolted down or something." "It can't be bolted to a driveway. That's illegal, just move it." Marcus was already out his front door, already running. "Hey, get away from my property." All 3 figures froze. Patricia's face, caught in the streetlight for just a moment, showed pure rage. Then she and the 2 young men scattered, running in different directions. Marcus didn't chase them. He stood by his trash can, phone recording everything, and waited for the police. Officer Rodriguez arrived 7 minutes later with a partner. Marcus showed them the footage immediately. All 4 cameras, all angles, showing Patricia's face clearly, showing her giving direct orders to destroy his property, showing her fleeing when caught. Rodriguez's expression changed from weary to focused. "This is conspiracy to commit vandalism, trespassing, and possibly stalking given the pattern, and we've got her on camera, clear as day." "There's more," Marcus said, and showed them the footage from the lawn salting, the mailbox destruction, every incident captured over the past 3 weeks. Rodriguez's partner, a younger officer named Sawyer, whistled low. "This lady's been harassing you for weeks. Why didn't you show us this footage before?" "I needed her to make it undeniable. One incident could be dismissed. This is a pattern." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "Smart, risky but smart. Okay, we're going to pay Mrs. Hendricks a visit. Do you want to press charges?" "For everything. Vandalism, trespassing, harassment, stalking, conspiracy, all of it." As the police cruiser drove toward Patricia's house, Marcus sent the footage to Andrea, to Gary Friedman, and to Miguel with a simple message. "It's done, we have everything." 20 minutes later, the neighborhood erupted. Lights flickered on in every house as police knocked on Patricia's door. Marcus watched from his window as Patricia emerged, still in her black outfit, her face a mask of barely controlled fury. The conversation was too far away to hear, but he could read the body language. Patricia was arguing, gesturing aggressively. Rodriguez remained calm, professional. Sawyer took notes. After 15 minutes, they placed handcuffs on Patricia Hendricks and guided her into the cruiser. Marcus's phone exploded with texts. Miguel, holy shit, dude, they just arrested Patricia. What happened? Unknown number. This is Gary Friedman. Thank God, what did you do? Another unknown. This is Sarah Reyes. I heard they arrested Patricia. Is it true? Is she finally caught? And then, from the HOA Facebook group, he saw Melissa Hendricksport had posted. My mother has been falsely arrested by police responding to fake evidence from a disgruntled resident. This is harassment of the worst kind. We will be pursuing all legal options against Marcus Reed and anyone who supports this witch hunt. Free mom, corrupt police injustice in Oakmont. The comments were immediate and divided. What evidence? What happened? Patricia wouldn't do anything wrong. This is ridiculous. I always knew that Marcus guy was trouble. But then Miguel posted the video. Not the full thing, but a 30-second clip showing Patricia clearly ordering the two men to vandalize Marcus's property. The group went silent for exactly 4 minutes. Then the flood began. Oh my God, Patricia did this. How long has she been doing things like this? I defended her. I defended her and she was. This explains so much about the Reyes family leaving. We need an emergency HOA meeting, now. Gary Friedman posted. I'm calling an emergency board session for tomorrow night. All residents invited. We need to discuss serious governance issues. Marcus finally allowed himself to breathe. He walked outside, looked at his trash can, still sitting perfectly at 3 feet from the curb, still recording, still waiting. His phone rang, Andrea calling at 3 in the morning. You did it, she said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. The police just called me. Patricia's being charged with multiple counts, and with the video evidence combined with the testimony from former residents, it's going to stick. What about the financial fraud? I'm filing the complaint with the state board first thing in the morning. Between the criminal charges and the fraud investigation, Patricia's done. Her reign is over. Marcus sat down on his front steps, suddenly exhausted. I just wanted to put my trash can out without it getting kicked over. Andrea laughed. And you ended up dismantling a 12-year dictatorship with a high-tech trash can. That's going to be one hell of a story. As dawn broke over Oakmont Hills, Marcus watched his neighbors emerge from their houses in 2s and 3s, gathering in clusters to talk. The word had spread. Patricia Hendricks, their HOA president for 12 years, had been arrested for harassment and vandalism. Miguel walked over, 2 cups of coffee in hand. Figured you could use this. Thanks, Marcus took the cup gratefully. So, you trapped the trap setter with a trap. That's either poetic justice or you've been watching too much Mission Impossible. Little bit of both. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the neighborhood wake up to its new reality. Then Gary Friedman approached, looking like he'd aged backward 10 years overnight. Marcus, I owe you an apology. I should have stood up to her years ago. I was a coward. You helped in the end, that's what matters. I've got the financial records ready for the state investigation, and I've already drafted my resignation from the board. We need to start fresh, with term limits and oversight and all the things we should have had from the beginning. Marcus nodded. The neighborhood deserves better. Yes, it does. Gary shook his hand firmly. Thank you for being braver than the rest of us. As Gary walked away, Miguel nudged Marcus. So what are you going to do with the super can? Keep it. Marcus looked at his trash can, sitting there innocently, containing enough technology to run a small surveillance operation. You know what? I think I'll keep it, just in case. They both laughed. The nightmare was over. Or so Marcus thought. The emergency HOA meeting took place Tuesday evening in a community center packed beyond capacity. Marcus counted at least 75 people crammed into a space meant for 40. News had spread beyond Oakmont Hills. Local reporters stood in the back, cameras ready. Gary Friedman sat at the head table with the 2 remaining board members, looking more resolute than Marcus had ever seen him. Melissa Hendricksport's chair sat conspicuously empty. This emergency session is called to order, Gary began, his voice steady. We're here to address serious allegations of misconduct, financial impropriety, and criminal behavior by former board president Patricia Hendricks. Former, someone called out. As of this morning, Patricia submitted her resignation from all HOA positions, effective immediately. Additionally, the board has voted to place Melissa Hendricksport on indefinite administrative leave pending investigation. The room erupted. Gary banged the gavel, Patricia's gavel, Marcus noted with grim satisfaction. Please let me finish. Over the past 72 hours, we've received testimony from multiple former and current residents detailing a pattern of harassment, fraud, and abuse of authority spanning 12 years. The state HOA regulatory board has opened a formal investigation. Criminal charges are pending, and effective tonight, this board is implementing immediate reforms. Gary pulled out a document. First, no board member can serve more than 2 consecutive 3-year terms. Second, all violation notices must be reviewed by the full board before fines are assessed. Third, we're establishing an independent appeals process for any resident who feels they've been unfairly cited. And fourth, all HOA financial records will be audited quarterly by an independent firm. Someone started clapping, then another person. Within seconds, the entire room was applauding. Andrea, sitting beside Marcus, leaned over. That's a complete overhaul of governance. He's actually doing it. He should have done it years ago. True, but better late than never. After the meeting, Marcus was swarmed by neighbors. People he'd never spoken to approached to apologize, to share their own stories of Patricia's harassment, to thank him for standing up. Sarah Reyes had driven 3 hours to attend. She hugged Marcus so hard his ribs hurt. You have no idea, she whispered. You have no idea what it means to see her fall. She destroyed my family, and now maybe we can have closure. Marcus introduced her to the other former residents who'd testified. They stood in a circle in the parking lot, sharing their stories, finally able to talk openly about what Patricia had done to them. She made me think I was crazy, one man said. Every day some new violation, every day some new threat. I started questioning whether I was imagining things. That's what she wanted, Sarah said. She gaslit entire families into leaving. But why? Marcus asked. I still don't understand why she targeted people so viciously. Gary Friedman, who'd been listening from nearby, cleared his throat. I think I know. Can I share something? They nodded. 13 years ago, Patricia and her husband were facing foreclosure. Their finances were a mess. They were about to lose their house. Then Patricia ran for HOA president against Robert Chen, Andrea's father, and won by 3 votes. Andrea's eyes widened. I never knew that. Nobody did, but within 6 months of becoming president, Patricia's financial situation magically improved. She started a consulting business for HOA management. Her son-in-law got all the landscaping contracts. Her nephew became the HOA's attorney. She built an empire out of this neighborhood, siphoning money through inflated contracts and kickbacks. And anyone who questioned her got driven out, Marcus said. Exactly. The Reyes family, the Chens, the Thompsons, the Martinez family, they all asked questions about finances or challenged her authority. So she manufactured violations until they left. Sarah shook her head. She destroyed lives to protect her scam. A scam that netted her over $800,000 over 12 years, Gary said. The audit's preliminary findings are devastating. She's going to prison for this. The group fell silent, processing the scope of Patricia's crimes. Finally, Marcus spoke. Then we need to make sure every former resident knows. Everyone she drove out deserves to know the truth. Over the next week, Andrea coordinated with the state regulatory board and local police to document the full extent of Patricia's fraud network. The preliminary audit revealed $847,000 in inflated landscaping contracts to her son-in-law, $213,000 in bogus legal fees to her nephew, $156,000 in consulting fees paid directly to Patricia for services never rendered, $89,000 in settlement payments to residents she'd harassed, paid from HOA funds to protect herself. In total, over $1.3 million had been stolen from the neighborhood over 12 years. The local news picked up the story. HOA president arrested in massive fraud scheme ran on every channel. Patricia's mugshot, her perfectly coiffed hair disheveled, her makeup smeared, her expression a mixture of rage and disbelief, became a local sensation. Marcus watched the coverage from his living room, Miguel beside him with beer and pizza. You know what's wild? Miguel said. This all started because she kicked your trash can over. I know, if she'd just left me alone, none of this would have come out. Pride before the fall, man. She thought she was untouchable. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Jason. Dude, you're famous. Just saw your story on Reddit. 18,000 upvotes and counting. He pulled up the thread. HOA Karen arrested after resident installs high-tech trap trash can. The comments were incredible. This is the most satisfying justice story I've ever read. Someone make this into a movie. The trash can that took down a criminal empire. What a timeline. That engineer friend is the real MVP. Where can I get a trap can? Andrea called an hour later. Marcus, I've been contacted by 3 different news outlets wanting to interview you. CNN, local NBC affiliate, and a true crime podcast. Interested. Will it help the other victims? Absolutely. It puts pressure on the prosecution to seek maximum penalties, and it exposes HOA fraud as a broader issue. People need to know this happens. Then yes, let's do it. The interviews happened over the next 2 weeks. Marcus told his story carefully, always bringing it back to the other victims, always emphasizing the systemic issues that allowed Patricia to operate for so long. The true crime podcast episode, titled The Trash Can Trap, went viral. Within days, it had 3 million downloads. Other HOA fraud victims from around the country started reaching out, sharing their own stories. A movement began. Patricia's trial was scheduled for 6 months later. The charges were extensive. 15 counts of fraud, 7 counts of stalking and harassment, 3 counts of conspiracy to commit vandalism, and a dozen financial crimes. Her attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal. The prosecutor, emboldened by public attention and the mountain of evidence, refused. This was going to trial. In the meantime, Oakmont Hills underwent a transformation. The new board, led by Gary Friedman and 3 other reform-minded residents, implemented every promised change. Violation notices dropped to nearly 0. Property values actually increased as word spread about the neighborhood's reform. Marcus became an unlikely community leader. He helped draft new bylaws focused on fairness and transparency. He started an HOA oversight committee that met monthly to review all board decisions, and he gave presentations to other neighborhoods about recognizing and preventing HOA abuse. Sarah Reyes and her husband moved back to Oakmont Hills, buying a house 3 doors down from their old property. Other former residents returned. The neighborhood, once ruled by fear, became something better. 6 months later, Marcus sat in a courtroom beside Andrea, watching Patricia Hendricks face justice. She'd aged dramatically. Her hair was now fully gray, her face drawn and haggard. The woman who'd terrorized a neighborhood looked small and broken behind the defense table. The trial lasted 3 weeks. 32 witnesses testified, including Marcus, Gary, Sarah, and a parade of former residents. The financial evidence was overwhelming. The video footage from the trap can was played repeatedly, showing Patricia's face clearly, her voice unmistakable. The defense tried to argue entrapment, tried to paint Marcus as a vindictive troublemaker, tried to suggest Patricia had been framed. Nothing stuck. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted in applause before the judge could bang his gavel. Patricia sat motionless, staring straight ahead as the verdict was read. At sentencing 2 weeks later, the judge addressed Patricia directly. Mrs. Hendricks, you held a position of trust within your community. Rather than serving your neighbors with integrity, you exploited them, harassed them, and stole from them for over a decade. You destroyed families, damaged lives, and enriched yourself through systematic fraud. The court finds your conduct to be among the most egregious examples of HOA abuse I've encountered. He sentenced her to 12 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. Her son-in-law received 8 years for his role in the fraud. Her nephew got 5 years for facilitating the scheme through bogus legal work. Melissa Hendricks Sport, who'd cooperated with prosecutors, received 2 years probation and was banned from ever serving on an HOA board. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Marcus. How does it feel to see justice served? It feels like closure, not just for me, but for every person she victimized. What would you say to other people dealing with HOA harassment? Marcus looked directly into the cameras. Document everything. Take photos, videos, measurements, keep every email, every notice, every interaction. Speak to your neighbors, you're probably not the only victim. And most importantly, don't be afraid to stand up. Bullies count on silence. Once you shine a light on them, they collapse. Any regrets about how this played out? Only that it took so long for someone to stop her. But I'm grateful I could be part of ending it. That evening, Marcus stood in his driveway looking at his trash can, the trap can that had started everything. It sat at exactly 3 feet from the curb, innocent and ordinary-looking, its high-tech interior now just a conversation piece. Miguel walked over with a bottle of champagne. To the trash can that broke a tyrant, Miguel said, raising the bottle. Marcus laughed, to standing up even when it's scary. They drank from the bottle, no glasses needed, as neighbors began emerging from houses, drawn by some unspoken understanding. Within minutes, the entire cul-de-sac was gathered in Marcus's driveway. Sarah Reyes brought cookies. Gary brought a speaker and music. Someone else brought folding chairs. An impromptu block party erupted, the first in 12 years. Children ran through yards without fear of violation notices. Neighbors talked openly about improvements they wanted to make to their homes, paint colors, gardens, decorations, without worrying about HOA retaliation. Freedom tasted like champagne and sugar cookies and summer air. Andrea found Marcus later, watching the celebration with a satisfied smile. "You know," she said, "my father would have loved to see this. He tried to reform the HOA all those years ago and got driven out for it. Seeing Patricia finally face consequences, he would have been proud." "Is that why you took my case?" "Partly, but also because HOA abuse is rampant and someone needs to fight it. You were brave enough to stand up. That's rare." Marcus shook his head. "I wasn't brave. I was just tired of having my trash can kicked over." Sometimes bravery starts with something small. You defended your trash can with such precision that you accidentally exposed a criminal empire. That's either the luckiest or most brilliant accidental investigation ever. "I vote lucky." "I vote brilliant. You knew she'd escalate. You prepared for it. You documented everything. And when the moment came, you had proof of everything." Marcus considered this, maybe a little of both. As the sun set over Oakmont Hills, turning the sky orange and purple, Marcus looked around at his neighborhood. No longer a collection of houses ruled by fear, but a community built on trust and fairness. All because he'd refused to let someone kick over his trash can. Miguel appeared with a grin. "So what are you going to do with the super can? Museum piece? Sell it on eBay?" Marcus looked at the trash can, still sitting at its perfect 3-foot mark. "I think I'll keep it right where it is, as a reminder." "A reminder of what?" "That standing up to bullies works. That documentation defeats tyranny. And that sometimes justice comes from the most unexpected places." Miguel raised his beer bottle. "To trash cans and truth." Marcus clinked his bottle against Miguel's. "To trash cans and truth." The party continued late into the night. Music and laughter filled the cul-de-sac that had been silent for so long. And in his driveway, at exactly 3 feet from the curb, Marcus's trash can stood watch, a monument to the power of standing your ground. Patricia Hendricks had tried to break him with petty harassment and abuse of power. Instead, she'd broken herself against his refusal to bend. The trash can remained. Justice had been served, and Oakmont Hills was finally truly free.